This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 322 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast on life-changing study abroad experiences. I'd like to quickly pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast today, shortly before I head overseas for the first time this year, and the first time I'll be travelling with my teenager since before COVID, so a bit excited. More on that to come. Now, back to life-changing study abroad experiences. As I've said in previous episodes, connected to this topic, I didn't have the chance to study abroad, or let's say I didn't find and make the chance to study abroad. I'm sure it existed, but it wasn't really kind of on my radar. But every time I speak to anyone who has done so, they are... well, I've never heard of anyone regretting it, let's put it that way. So my first guest today is author Pam Petro, and she really ended up studying abroad kind of really by chance, but it was definitely life-changing.
It's a funny story because I went to Brown University in the States and I was about to graduate. I went to pick up a final paper in the art building, and there was this hideous poster printed on sort of sickly yellow paper of an embryo with its head exploding and words coming out. And the look on your face of horror is just kind of what I thought too. But it said, a taught MA called The Word and the Visual Imagination at St. David's University College in Wales, in Lampeter, Wales. I had painstakingly put together an undergrad degree in word and image studies, borrowing from art departments and and the writing program and all of that. And here was sort of the background to it. And it looked at every word and image combination from medieval manuscripts up to film. So this was exciting. I applied and I deferred for a year so I could make some money to go. Mm-hmm. Never once in that time did I look into Wales at all. I thought I was going to be there for the academics. My parents, meanwhile, read George Borrow's Wild Wales. I did nothing. I thought, it's that little place next to England. And I could not have been more wrong. You know, I didn't know Wales had a separate language. I didn't know that language had been outlawed under Henry VIII and would only be reinstated in 1993. I didn't know any of this. I just showed up there. And when I showed up there, the first thing that happened was my parents had been driving on a tour, driving me around England and Scotland, and we came to Wales, came to campus, and I walked into the old building, which is a big quadrangle. This is the St. David's University College, which is now the University of Wales, Trinity St. David's, is the third oldest private university in the UK.
Oh, wow.
So it has a pretty quadrangle based on, let's call it Oxbridge. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one. And I walked in and said, I'm here. And they said, well, who are you? And I said, I'm doing a program called the Word and the Visual Imagination. And they had to call someone from the English department who said, oh, yeah, she's coming. And somewhere there was no communication between the English department and the rest of the university. So there was no place for me to live.
Oh, no.
They said, oh, dear. They brought me a cup of tea with milk. And I thought, this is bad. And my parents, too. I thought, oh, what? That's to soften the blow. And the blow was...
you're homeless.
There was no postgraduate housing. Mm. There was one hall of residence with one room available. It was an all-male hall entirely occupied by the rugby team.
Oh, I mean, wouldn't be my first choice.
So I had to move in with the rugby team, where I lived for 3 months. What was really funny was we got along, and they started coming to me before matches, and I would make them up with eyeliner and blush and mascara. And they said it was to freak out the other teams. I think they really enjoyed it. It was kind of the glam rock moment. Anyway, one day, one of them moved out, and I came back, and there were suitcases and boxes in the room next to mine, and there were plants on top. And I thought, only a woman would come with plants. And I knocked on the door, and Annie Garthwaite opened the door, and she and I have been dear, dear, dear friends ever since. We both talked then about the books we would write. I would write a book about how much I loved Wales and why it was so important to me. I had to figure out why, but it would take 40 years.
But you knew then you wanted to do it.
I knew then I wanted to do it. She would write a book about Richard III's mother because that's who she was obsessed with, Cecily Neville. From that moment, we went in different directions. I became a travel writer, traveling the world, but not making a whole lot of money, and then a professor. And she went into business, became a really powerful businesswoman, learned how Cecily would have operated in medieval times as a powerful ruler businesswoman, wow. Went and got an MA at 50, as she said she would, and wrote that book. And our books came out within 2 months of each other.
No way. Wow.
In 2021.
After all those years.
But then the program was great. It turned out, though, that being in Wales was greater. And that was really the reason I needed to be there. I was there for a little over a year. And that's when I went home. I went home in quotes because I had found my home in Wales. But now I went to the home where I never felt at home in the States, in New Jersey. I wasn't just homesick for Wales. I missed, I think, even though I couldn't have articulated this, I missed the person that Wales had allowed me to be and become. And I wasn't old enough or secure enough to bring that person back to New Jersey. And my family called it Pam's Welsh thing. My aunt would call my mom and say, "Is Pam over the Welsh thing yet?" I didn't get over the Welsh thing. Never. But that taught me about hiraeth, the word hiraeth, which is what my book, The Long Field, is all about. That longing for something that not only can't you have, but that's internal to you, really. That's part of your imagination that you project on the world. When you say it's a home you can't go back to, it's really an internal home or a way of being, a way of thinking.
Sounds amazing. Just what life ordered, isn't it? It's funny when you see a random poster, what can come of it. Now, in fact, Pam's book, her newest book about Wales, The Long Field, is coming with me on this trip that I mentioned in the intro because we will be partly in England and partly in northern Wales. So I thought it's a perfect time to read it. I'll tell you more about it when I get back. Now, my next guest today is Brandon Miller from 2Fly, which is a foundation which helps students from underprivileged backgrounds access travel experiences like studying abroad. And of course, you won't be surprised to know this work was heavily influenced by Brandon's own experiences of studying abroad. So I asked him to tell me all about it.
My first study abroad experience, which is my first experience outside of the country, like without my parents, I studied at Georgia Tech. Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. And coincidentally or luckily or whatever it might be enough, Georgia Tech actually has a campus in Lorraine, France, or Metz, France. So in not necessarily knowing if I wanted to study abroad or not, I found out that if I studied abroad, I got in-state tuition, whereas if I studied at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, I had to pay out-of-state tuition. So my parents were like, you need to study abroad because it's going to be
it's cheaper.
Way cheaper.
So just because as an Australian, I don't understand, is it significally cheaper, the in-state tuition level?
It was significantly cheaper. It was like a third of out-of-state tuition. So yes, I decided to, take on this journey of studying abroad in France. I knew a few people that were going, right? I had a couple of close friends that were going, but I really didn't know a lot of people. So it was really my first time having to figure things out on my own. Didn't speak a lick of French. And, I go and I spend 12 weeks studying at Georgia Tech Lorraine in France. And looking back at it, it's funny because I really don't even remember the classes I took. Like, I know I passed all the classes. Don't remember any of the classes I took, though, outside of French, some type of history class, and a couple of others, because being able to just like submerge myself in a new culture, a new country was like way more memorable and impactful. So I spent 12 weeks abroad. Every weekend we hopped on a train and we went to a different country. I think we visited 8 countries in 12 weeks. There was a number of experiences, some probably I shouldn't go into on this podcast because learning abroad and kind of figuring my way. We ran into a lot of funny circumstances.
Can imagine.
But my number one experience, which was like really memorable to me for a couple of different reasons, was going to Cologne, Germany. And we just happened to pick going to Germany that weekend. And we saw that there was a Jay-Z Kanye concert, Watch the Throne, that was happening the weekend we were there. So we're like, oh, we have to go. We have to do this. So we buy tickets like day of at the box office. Jay-Z is like one of my favorite rappers. So I was just like stoked and pumped the whole day. We go to the concert, have a great time. The best concert I've been to, but I lose my wallet. So I'm not only abroad, not by my dorm and not by my college campus. I'm in a different country. I have no passport. I have no wallet. I have no money. And we're trying to figure out, like, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just like call my parents. So it was one of the biggest like learning experiences because I like had to figure out how to shut off my debit cards abroad and how to order new debit cards and a new ID abroad and get a new passport abroad in a country that I didn't speak the language. It's like after a concert at night, and it's looking back, it's just like really, really funny. I know when I told my parents about it, they were probably so stressed out. But that is probably my most memorable experience, just because like I felt like I put on my big boy pants and like had to figure it out without calling my parents.
Yeah,
but
it's a big step. Yeah.
But overall, like the experience of just studying abroad and being able to just like go from country to country in Europe in a way that you can't really do in the States, and just like see so many different cultures, meet so many different types of people, it was so cool. I'd recommend studying abroad to any student.
100%. When I was at university, study abroad kind of existed, but it was, I went through uni not really recognizing that it was a thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of early days, I suppose. And, but these days I teach sometimes at uni and I'll have study abroad students and I'm always so excited to meet them and in turn always encourage my local students, you should do this too. Look at all these places you can go. And like, it's such a great age to travel. And it's such a great way because like you said, you had 12 weeks there, like it's an extended time and you've got like some local support, and sort of some scaffolding to kind of help you. But there's all these other options around. And I think it's just one of the most perfect ways to get, an experience abroad.
Oh, 100%. And one of the other unique things was being able to, like, I just vividly remember going to Amsterdam for a weekend, and I studied abroad. I think it was 2011 or 2012. So it was around the time of the US election. I was so surprised when I went to Amsterdam, how many people in the Netherlands that knew what was going on in the United States. Like they knew all about the candidates, they knew, everything that was happening politically. And I think I had the aha of like, I knew nothing. Like if you asked me what's going on in the Netherlands or, I would not be able to tell you. But so many folks are kind of like tuned into the United States. And that was kind of the moment where I realized that like I needed to be a better like global citizen and like know what's going on in the world, and having those types of conversations in the coffee shop with folks asking about, how I felt about Barack Obama. Like that was such a cool kind of moment for me as a Black American abroad.
Yes. What good timing. Yeah.
It's funny because like I can't tell you the person's name or the people's names, but I can like really remember every conversation that was like kind of at that caliber or like that impactful, and like where I was and like my ahas and what I was thinking. Like there was another one. We went to like an art exhibit in the Netherlands as well. And like, I just remember folks coming up and like asking me questions about the United States. And I was just there to like look at art, but it was just like, I can just remember like the little kids and like the young, Senegalese boys that came and talked to me and they're like, you have the same color skin, but I can tell that you're not, from Africa. Like, where are you from? And you don't have an English accent. Like, the curiosity of the folks abroad was just so cool. It was such a great experience.
Sounds like Brandon learnt so much from his study abroad experience, much more than just the curriculum, which I think is probably always the case. Now, in my chat with Brandon, I did also mention having study abroad students in my classes. I've had them from all over the place, but they do seem to come especially from Europe. I've had some from Denmark and Spain. And relatively recently, I met Alex Zeringer, who was a study abroad student in a podcasting class I taught at Murdoch University last year. So he's technically a study abroad student from Ireland, but he's German, which will be more explained in our chat. Anyway, he has since returned and left Australia, but it was great to have a chat and catch up with him after that. And I asked him how it came to be that he was a student studying abroad in Australia.
I was just so into seeing more of this beautiful world. And my inner me always wants to challenge me, but like towards the better. And after having had like over a year in Ireland, which I still do enjoy, I still felt like, Alex, you have 3 years of studies now, and I just know there's a chance you might end up doing a semester abroad, even though you are already abroad.
True, but
in Ireland, I just wanted it so just so bad, and because I just love exploring new places, getting to know new people, getting to know new cultures. Again, throwing myself out of my comfort zone and just in order to grow. Then again, I was just so eager to do this, and I was talking to the internationals office at my college, and I told them, guys, I'm in my 3rd semester now. Is there any chance to go abroad? And like with everyone else, again, they're like, aren't you already like abroad? Just for they've gotten me some countries, because there's some program like Erasmus, so you can go to some other European countries to go abroad for a semester. And then I was like, guys, maybe is there any possibility to go outside of Europe? Because I've never lived outside of Europe, and I'd really love to do so. And there was a chance to go to the States or to Australia. Or once I actually looked up the tuition fees again, because you guys really have like high tuition fees.
I know, especially for international students. Sorry.
Oh, honestly, sometimes I feel like how is one supposed to actually afford this? But we did have like a bit of a scholarship, or like there was one limited spot at my college, right. And with this limited spot, you wouldn't have to pay double amount of tuition fees, right. For this semester. Yeah. And I told them, whatever I have to do, I will do this. I am so keen on going. I'll do this. Whatever it takes, I have to get this opportunity, this limited spot, because otherwise I actually can't go to Australia because it's just not affordable for me. I just can't do it. In the end, I was the lucky one, and I actually got this spot. Griffith, like my college in Dublin, sent me over to Australia.
Fabulous.
And, I was so lucky, because I always say it's a one in a lifetime kind of chance to be able to do that. It's such a privilege, which I'm aware of. And I was just so happy that it actually worked out, because I put in the work, I put in the effort, and then they told me, Alex, we actually have chosen you. You're able, you're the one, you can go over. And that's how I just ended up in Australia, because I've never been. And my cousin, she lives like, let's rather say my distant cousin. I always call her my cousin, but she's been living in Sydney for over 30 years, and she's always said, "Come over, you'd love Australia, you'd love the Aussies, just come over." But it's so
it
far
really
away,
is.
and it's so expensive to get there. So obviously, you just can't go over.
Not for the weekend.
Like, unless you... Yes. So that's how I actually ended up in Australia, because I just wanted to go, and I just wanted to be able to go geographically towards the end of the world, like for us.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very far. Yeah, absolutely. So you got to Australia. What were your first impressions?
My first impressions were, it's hot. I arrived in February, and it was still around 30 degrees, I'd say. And it was it was in the evening, and I just left the Perth airport, and it was just really hot. But my first impressions in general were, this is gonna be a fun time, I guess, because I just felt like really, how am I supposed to say this? But I really felt like positive, like good, like homey-ish, if that's even a word. But
Makes sense.
I just felt like I felt like, oh yeah, I think settling in here won't take too long.
Yeah.
I just felt like I had a good thought of it, and I just think which I'm not used to. I'd say is those huge distances and mostly having to rely on a car in Australia.
Yeah.
I'd say because I'm used to taking like public transport to get me from A to B, or just walking or whatever. And it took me a bit of quite some time from the airport towards my apartment in Perth, and everything was just so big, and the streets were so big, those big cars, which like my first impression was that Australia is not too different. I'd say you can it's Perth. I always called it pretty Perth. I felt like it could be probably even a big city here somewhere in Europe.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. Alex's feelings on arriving in Perth are actually that it felt familiar is really similar to how I felt, funnily enough, when I moved to Germany. I'd been living in Japan and then Slovakia, which 20 years ago before it joined the EU, things were a bit more different. And then when I got to Germany, it felt kind of almost too much like home. But I must say that the longer I lived there, the more ways I found that it was completely different to home. So lots of learnings too. And I know that Alex's study abroad experiences have taught him so much. So that's it for my tales of studying abroad and changing your life for episode 322 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. A big thanks to all my guests. I started off chatting with Pam Petro. You can find out more about her work at www.pamelapetro.com, and of course her newest book is The Long Field. That's the one that's coming with me on my trip. I then chatted with Brandon Miller from the Two Fly Foundation, and you can find out more about that and how you could even support them at twoflyfoundation.org. That's Twofly, TOOFLY. And lastly, I chatted with Alex Zeringer, and you will find his LinkedIn link in the show notes. For this episode, the show notes will be at notaballerina.com/322. I've also linked to a couple of other episodes I've had in the past about studying abroad, episode 233, and also studying in other countries, episode 248. Don't forget to join our chats either in Facebook or LinkedIn. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers in either of those platforms, or check the show notes, and get our newsletter by signing up at Substack. If you go to thoughtfultravel.substack.com, you will find us there. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.